Hello, everyone. This is Giovanni from the Sicilian Secret Diet Plan, and today I am thrilled to be speaking with Rob Besner, who's the CEO of Therasage. He is an authority on sauna, which is a modality that Sandra and I recommend to our patients to use on a regular basis for improving health span. Robbie is a philanthropist and chief science officer, device developer, and co-founder of a company called Therasage. And this is a company that makes premier infrared heating products, recognized as a leader in integrated infrared technology. Rob has always been an advocate of natural health and wellness. He graduated from Boston University in pre-medicine, engineering, psychology, and business. He continued to postgraduate work at Case Western Medical School and then holistic medicine. Therasage has built a reputation with the healthcare community and mainstream public by educating and creating special cutting-edge applications and protocols unique from the rest. Robbie continues his research to develop new devices and health science applications to bring the power of healing with nature to the world. Now, during this interview, we're going to be talking about many different things as they relate to these types of technologies, including how to stay toxin-free naturally with natural frequencies of lights and energies. We'll also talk about initially how he entered this whole area by his daughter's Lyme disease, a very moving and interesting subject, and how this technology helped him understand how these technologies can make people better, and how it made his daughter better. We'll also talk about all the different wavelengths of light, including infrared, and the effect of sauna on heart rate variability. We'll also be talking about the electromagnetic field, its general concepts, and also the electromagnetic fields in our own bodies. We'll talk about Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt and a cell tower study about EMF, detoxification. We'll also talk about Gerald Pollack and the 4 phases of water. And, well, an interesting part to this is binding toxins as they get released into our systems and what to do, and practical advice about how to go about this. In addition, we'll be talking about the effect of sauna on nitric oxide, which is very important, as we talked about before, on the endothelial function. How sauna actually has been used therapeutically for treatment of depression, something that Sandra is very interested in. And we'll also give you some practical sites on where to get binders. And we'll talk about the effect of sauna on heat shock proteins, and how some of these proteins specifically target viruses, and namely the COVID virus. And then we'll end by talking about the effect of sauna on growth hormone. It's one of the best ways of increasing growth hormone. Sleep and sauna are 2 ways to do that. Now, from our own perspective, we are very much interested in the effect of sauna on health. We have previously talked about the work of Jari Laukkanen, who's a MD in Finland, and he has found that sauna lowers the risk of cardiac sudden death, lowers the risk of fatal myocardial infarctions, lowers the risk of atherosclerotic heart disease, and also lowers the risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. This has been very well studied in Finland, where, as we all know, people there use saunas quite frequently. There's many, many studies about sauna, and one in neurology showed, in the journal Neurology, showed that there was a significant reduced stroke risk in people who used saunas frequently. And interesting, combining sauna with exercise increases muscle hypertrophy. And when you combine sauna with nitric oxide intake, that increases it even more. And this is by increasing heat shock proteins, growth hormone, and it improves insulin sensitivity. In addition, sauna increases the release of BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which results in neurogenesis, or the growth of new brain cells, neuroplasticity, memory, improved learning, reduces anxiety and depression. And then interesting, sauna also results in what's called a runner's high, because it releases endorphins, which stimulate the mu-opioid receptors, and they also increase the release of dynorphins, which increase the activity of these mu-opioid receptors. So when you do sauna on a regular basis, you develop this, quote, runner's high, as we develop that with exercise. So with no further ado, I will now start our interview with Robbie Besner.
All right, great, Rob. So let's get started.
We're very excited to have you here today to talk about the health benefits of sauna. It's one of the lifestyle factors that we would like to include even more into
Terrific.
Lifestyle factors that we recommend our patients, our friends, and to live well.
Yep.
And the two of us spend a lot of time in the sauna. So we're promoters.
Yeah, we
believers.
We use it either separately or actually together. We have a sauna that we sit in, but I recommend your saunas very much to my patients. And I'll let you talk more about it. But I think the individual saunas that you make are very effective and very helpful. But before we get there, let's talk about your path, how it led to creating this great company.
Okay, great. Thank you for saying that. And I'm very humbled and really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all and to share some of my wisdom, in a sense, with your community. And so we can go anywhere in any direction you like to, but let me start with kind of how we got started. And we didn't have traditional venture capital. We didn't have a business plan per se. What we had was a personal experience with our oldest child. Our daughter in her early teens contracted Lyme disease. And having a healthcare background, I got all the way to my first year in med school at Case Western and decided, this was 35 years ago plus, that it wasn't, well, we didn't use the words then. It didn't resonate for me. Okay, so I took a leave, which was extended, 30 years plus of leaving. And developed other businesses and did some other things. But I never forgot the disciplines of zoology, physiology, biology, all the things that I studied up to getting to and even through my initial studies in anatomy. And so, as life presented itself, when my daughter got sick, we had means, and we found this was 25 years ago, we found the most relevant, experienced Lyme literate doctor in the industry. And it wasn't like Lyme just started 25 years ago, but it was somewhat of in its infancy. And his name was Dr. Joseph Birascano. And we're down in Florida, and he was located up in Long Island, New York, out on like East Hampton or somewhere. And so every 6 weeks we would go up to visit him. He would tweak Julia's protocol. Then we come back down. And then again, it wasn't like today. We didn't have virtual doctors. We didn't have telemedicine. What we had was a primary doctor in Florida that corresponded with the doctor in this case, New York. And then Julia, after a short period of time, she had a neurologist, a pain management doctor, a general practitioner, a Lyme literate doctor. She had a family of doctors, which of course never communicated with each other. So it was a pharmacological nightmare because everyone was prescribing different medications, and that was a little bit of a challenge.
And it's a very complicated disease.
Yes. And that it took us a while to discern that she even had a Lyme because her initial symptoms was endometriosis. And when she didn't recover from that surgical center that we found, then it led us to understand that 98% of the women that have that challenge and don't recover have Lyme disease. It wasn't even on our radar back then.
Why would you think that? Yeah.
Well, we weren't in ground zero. We weren't Lyme, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. We weren't up there. We're down in Florida, right? So why would we think? But turns out she had it. Actually, she had the East Coast and West Coast strain of Lyme and the co-infections. So, we don't do anything in a small way in my family, by the way. You should know. Anyway, so having a healthcare background, I just kind of took a little step back. I relied on the direction of the team of practitioners around her. But I took a look at her symptoms, and the way she expressed herself was high levels of toxicity and inflammation. She had body pain, and she had some cognitive challenges, probably related to what's called Lyme encephalitis, where Lyme is a spirochete, and it can actually go through the blood-brain barrier. So you can get Lyme. But she had, on her SPECT tests and some of the neurological tests, she had no lesions, but she did express some kinds of neurological deficiencies from my clinical view. All right, so I just took a step back and I said, well, what could I do? And having this kind of corresponding relationship, it's made me realize very quickly, and maybe a lot of people listening today through the whole COVID experience could understand that you spend a little bit of time with your practitioner and their team in this case, but most of the onus and the day-to-day care is on the individual and who they surround themselves with, their family and supportive networks. And so because we had corresponding relationships and no telemed like we have today, I took on the role of being my daughter's nurse, and I changed her PICC line and did all that stuff that we normally would bring in. I did all that, which gave me an amazing opportunity to bond with her on a personal level. But then I started to unpack her symptoms. And when I looked at the way she was expressing herself, I said, okay, I see that there's a strong correlation between inflammation and toxicity. And so what are the best methods to lower inflammation? And I looked at invasive forms like dialysis and non-invasive, like taking either a pharmaceutical or a natural, like a infusical that would purge toxins on a cell level. And then I discovered that there's actually wavelengths of sunlight that will mobilize all the toxins in your body. And that really intrigued me. But 25 years ago, and that's the infrared spectrum that I'm discussing now. And so 25 years ago, it was really just used from a medical point of view by sports medicine doctors to lower the pain thresholds of the players and expedite their healing process, along with other sort of cocktails and things that they put together for the players. So I said, okay, pain management, I can deal with that. Mobilizing toxins, I can deal with that. And so, but at the very same time, there weren't any infrared devices that was basically mainstream that was sent, that the public could buy. So
my father was a general practitioner way back when, and he used an infrared lamp. Mm-hmm. He had read about the benefits of infrared, and patients would come all over just to get this localized infrared lamp treatment in his office, and he had some great results. So he was ahead of his time.
Right. And I guess that's where you got some of your own ability to be ahead of the curve in both of you, actually, in your applications. All right, so I organized a trip to China. I went for almost 3 months. I interviewed 65 factories, and I found 1 or 2 I wanted to work with, and I just started engineering and developing devices for personal use. My daughter responded really well. Her team of doctors saw how she was responding, and because their practices were almost 100% Lyme disease, they asked if I could start to manufacture or develop these for them and for their practices. And that really was the genesis of our company. We never really had a venture capital group. We didn't have a business plan. It was truly organic. As it is today, my wife and I own 100% of our company.
Oh, that's great.
Very good.
That's a great story. And your daughter responded to the infrared treatments?
Oh, amazing. She did so well with it, and it kept her really symptom free. And it gave me an opportunity to kind of look at just the simple term of diagnosis, a diagnosis is a label. In Lyme, as you pointed out a little earlier, it mimics so many other diseases that is often misdiagnosed. okay, actually the statistics are 8 out of 10 Lyme patients are misdiagnosed. In fact, to your point, may I call you Sandra? Is that okay?
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, I just didn't want to be inappropriate. So to your point, or to your skill set, oftentimes the general practitioner would say, you got to go see a psychiatrist. There's nothing wrong with your blood work. There's nothing wrong with this. It's all in your head. Okay. When truly there was something.
Lyme patients like that, correct? That you know they get Lyme, and you know they have been suffering for a very long time. And the same time that happens with a lot of other viruses, correct? That eventually affect the brain. And now we're seeing a lot of long COVID that has affected.
Exactly.
That has made people more depressed, more anxious, foggy, not being able to be as cognitive, sharp as.
Yeah.
And I guess there is recent data that shows that sauna helps COVID. And we have an anecdotal incident that our daughter, she's a nurse practitioner at Columbia, and she had COVID symptoms, came here home from New York, and then left.
She didn't know she had COVID.
No, she didn't know she had COVID. She came here, and then she left because she had symptoms, and she said she didn't want to infect us. Then Sandra and I started getting the same symptoms she had, so we were certain we had COVID, and we immediately went into the sauna. We went into the sauna for 45 minutes, and despite having and then she eventually did get COVID, diagnosed with the same symptoms, and we went into the sauna for 45 minutes, several days in a row, and never got it. So it's anecdotal, but I know there's some literature out there showing that, sauna has been helpful for COVID, and it makes sense because it increases immunity and it's antiviral.
Right. And there's so much deep science now on this, and we can share some of that together to today and to your community. So in my own journey, because in a small sense, and I'm saying this humbly, I'm kind of a pioneer in this area because we started early research, and my company, I use my engineering skills to develop things. So I don't want to sound corny about it, but I get downloads and I'm connected to source. And so I meditate. I'm very introspective, and it gives me ideas. And I manifest those ideas in physical expressions through our product development. We don't buy things from China and stick a label on it and sell it to the public. That's not what we do. And also, this is just part of the pillars of our company. We think, and we've seen this, where you go to conventions, you're a practitioner, you walk down the aisle, every vendor on the aisle, oh, I have the greatest this and I have the greatest that, right? And then you buy it, and they just need the sale, or they're looking for the sale. For us, we're looking to make sure that every patient and every doctor and every customer really gets the best benefit out of the devices that we make. And so we've created a subdivision called TheraHealth, and there we have a team of experts. Some of them are licensed and certified practitioners, integrated functional doctors, and that they work with our devices and they work with our customers, and the customer calls up and says, I bought this, I had this challenge, how can I use, what protocol would you suggest? So we really want to make sure that our customers get value, not just in the pricing of our devices, but how to use them to actually achieve their goals. And I think that differentiates us as a company than other companies out there today.
That's very much different. Now, my interest is in the cardiovascular benefits because I'm a cardiologist, and I know that there's researchers in Finland that have researched this quite well and have published in major journals and have shown that there's lower risk of heart disease, lower risk of cardiac sudden death, of atherosclerosis. We don't have a lot of medicines that can do this, and also lower risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. So I'd like to have what's your feeling about this side of?
Well, I'm totally on board. Just to your point, internally, I developed a heart rate variability program, so I can actually study the effects of our devices as I'm developing them and how they affect our autonomic nervous system. Of course, it's all heart driven, right? Because we're taking the RR ratio and then expanding our arithmetic or using algorithms.
Can you explain a second for our listeners what heart rate variability is?
Well, It basically, in simple terms, it's just the differential between each heartbeat. And so for someone that's a little older, whose heart has been working their whole lives, it takes a little bit more time for their heart to go from an excited state, like when they're nervous or they're frightened or something like that. So their heart's excited, and then to a calm state. Younger people, they generally transition back and forth pretty easily, almost like flexibility, right? Like if flexing a muscle, well, of course, your heart's a muscle.
Right. They're more resilient.
But if it's just, yeah. And so an older person would be a little more fatigued, and it would take a little bit, and we're talking milliseconds. It's not, when I say it takes more time, it's milliseconds of time. And our program is a live program. So it takes actually ECG. So 6 minutes or 5.5 minutes of live heart interaction. And as opposed to like people are wearing this, they call it an Oura ring, and it takes that statistics, but that's a static picture. It's just a picture, a snapshot, and they put the snapshots together and form a sort of a trend. And it's very good technology, but it's very different than what we're doing. But I use that technology to understand if my devices, as I'm developing them, is actually moving or shifting you from sympathetic dominance or being fight and flight and very anxious to parasympathetic. So certainly you can feel, being in a sauna or healing pad platforms, you can feel the warmth and you can feel your body kind of melting and you can feel that relaxation mode come in. But when you see it on a screen and there's statistical values and statistical differentials that you can actually measure, which is why I developed the program, it makes a big difference. And for me as a device developer, to know what direction I'm going as I'm making our devices. And so
actually insights supports it, right? So we have enough studies like Giovanni was talking about that support the benefits in cardiovascular health and mental health and in brain health. So you have, many ways for us to know that this does work and how it works.
Of course.
A little bit more complicated, right? So we're going to talk about that.
Right.
We believe that this actually works and why it works.
But to get back to heart rate variability, it's a big focus of my practice. And there's not a lot of things that improve heart rate variability. Exercise can improve it. But, this is one of the reasons why I recommend sauna to my patients is specifically for the heart rate variability effect, because, meditation can affect it and biofeedback can affect it. But sauna is really effective in helping and improve the heart rate variability. As you know, it decreases cardiovascular risk, especially the risk of cardiac sudden death, which is a major risk.
Right.
And it is proportional to the number of saunas that you do per week. So
yes.
So that
absolutely.
Right. So if you do, if you're in the sauna for 20 minutes for 1 to twice a week, you might decrease your risk for sudden death of 20%. But if you go 4 to 7 times a week, then you can decrease it by 40, 60%.
Correct.
It's dramatic. At getting up to decrease cardiovascular risk death by 60% is pretty dramatic.
Yes. And you may remember Dr. Steve Sinatra.
Yeah.
He's a very dear friend of mine. And he was a big ambassador for our equipment, big advocator, has sent us for decades patients and referrals because he, like yourselves, he practiced sauna every day and he saw the benefits. And one of the things that is unusual, we have different pillars to our technology. And one thing that 17 years ago, we had a notion about the harmful effects of electromagnetic fields, all the exogenous frequencies like 5G and electric cars now that we see it, and everything is electric, right? And wireless networks. And those frequencies, they actually oscillate. They at about 80 times higher than the frequency of our bodies and the frequency of the earth. And so when we are immersed in those frequencies, which we can't hear, we can't smell, we can't taste, like we don't sense them, but yet they do affect our physiology, right? And they also activate the microbial world, which could be mold or fungus or parasites or, virus or, bacteria. And that we're seeing now by simple blood analysis, we can see, I don't know if you've heard of a Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt. He's in the Pacific Northwest area. He did a study, measured 2 populations, okay? And he studied their blood and analyzed for the rural people lived in the rural areas and lived in the cities. And so basically they're breathing the same air, they're drinking the same water, they're eating the same food, but the big differential was the amount of concentration of cell towers, city being way more concentrated. When he looked at their blood studies and measured the mycotoxins which is basically the waste product of bacteria and parasites, all the organisms that live generally in harmony inside our body. That's the microbiome or the terrain. They were 80% more mycotoxins and neurotoxins in the blood samples from the people in the city. So he was able to postulate that the biggest differential was the cell towers, and that the higher frequencies that we're talking about now, they actually energize these microbes, which means that they're basically using more of your body resources, right? Your food sources and your minerals, trace minerals. They're also replicating at a higher rate, because that's their number one job, is to just survive and replicate. And they poop a lot, and the poop is measured in their blood. So we can measure their blood. And
basically, it augments these microbes in your system. It's a gain of function, basically, of these microbes. Well,
exactly.
That's fascinating. And how does sauna help in that?
Well, a couple of things. First off, what does a parasite, a Lyme disease, even in certain cases, cancer, because some cancers are very heat sensitive. And so when I can raise your core temperature to about 101 to 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit, so 3 or 4 degrees normally higher than your core temperature, there's a natural die-off of all these microbes. And so they start to slow down. So if it's an antagonistic organism, they're replicating at a slower rate. And at the very same time, that higher temperature kicks in your lymphatic system. It's actually 800 times more active. Your lymph system is 800 times more active at the temperature of about 101.5. So think about that. Our lymphatic system sits sort of, in resonance form. Certainly your brain distributes the soldiers as it has to fight the battles every day. And then now we start getting this fever, a false fever that we create by being in sauna. So what happens is that there's a natural die-off. The bugs don't replicate as fast, and your lymphatic or your immune system, natural immune system, is now kicked into overdrive. So that's a perfect storm in trying to fight
for the pathological bugs. What about the good bugs that are in our gut?
Well, there's always something that goes with the bathwater, But what happens there is it offers opportunistically, it offers the individual to build back their terrain with healthy bacteria, and that would be through probiotic or prebiotic use, or using eating fermented foods that have the natural cultures of organisms that are beneficial to the body, that come from the generic or the geographic area that you domicile.
So what you're saying is that even if we eliminated some of the healthy bacteria, we can quickly reestablish a healthy microbiome by eating.
Exactly. And one of my friends, a doctor by the name of Zachary Bush, you may have heard of him, Zach Bush. He was the whistleblower that ignited the whole world to the...
Yeah, I have heard of him.
Yeah, glyphosate was his big thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he did a study, and I'll ask you, it'll be a little rhetorical in this dialogue now. He took one population that he did nothing. He didn't change at all. He took another population and he fed them fermented foods to rebuild back their terrain. And the third population, he used probiotics. Which of the three populations do you think actually turned out to be the healthiest? at the end of the study.
Fermented foods.
That's the way I would have gone, right? But the truth was the people that were left alone. They were just the tree huggers. They kicked their shoes off. They went out into the grass. They communed with, you send your little dog out to go do his thing outside. He comes back in and he gives you infrared from the sun, and he gives you organisms that you had in the garden, and then he gives you a big hug, and you gain all of that beauty of nature.
Maybe one of the reasons why dog owners live longer.
It could be. I'm sure that Sandra has a lot of psychological reasons why, something to do with unconditional love and all that other stuff that comes along with it. But I'm sure you're right there. And the idea is this, and Zach explained it to me. If you, let's say, had a bunch of weeds in your lawn in front, and you ask the gardener to come in, landscaper, and just take away your lawn, re-till the soil, and then plant seeds. Well, he may plant 1 or 2 or 3 varieties of grass in your front lawn. And then, of course, your grass grows. Inside your gut, inside your GI tract, you've got more than 60,000 organisms that live somewhat in harmony, right? In that they do all the pre-digesting of your food and, create that whole process for us. Well, when you plant a seed, and if you do this with, let's say you take a probiotic, if you look at the jar, it'll say 90 billion bacteria or 90 billion organisms, right? But they're what's called monofamilies. There's maybe 6 or 7 different variations in that jar. You've got 60,000 more in your gut. Now you plant 6 families of seeds in your lawn. That's the grass that grows. And it does prevent other grass from growing because it's taking up that space. Now, when you just take that same soil and you just let it populate with the bacteria and the natural organisms that are from that area, now you're getting a pleather and a great mixture and what you should have, diversity.
We absolutely agree with that. The reason why I said fermented food is because we like the natural approach. We're not big believers in taking probiotics for the gut microbiome.
Right.
The gut microbiome is fascinating, super important. Our life basically depends on these good organisms. And so we're in a total agreement there.
And I have to tell you, I'm a big fan, because as soon as we met the first time, I ran out and bought your book. I read it from cover to cover.
Oh,
I was very intrigued. I was very intrigued with the Mediterranean diet and that whole approach, because it's one area that I did a study 7 or 8 years ago on the blue zones in the world where people live the longest, and what the characteristics of their lifestyles and their diet. And I have a modified keto diet that I eat right now, but I'm actually shifting again, and I'm going to shift to your diet because I think that it's really the most balanced. It matches, my natural proclivities and food choices. And I think it's really actually something that's proven to be
it's shown to be, in U.S. News and World Report has rated it 5 years in a row as the best diet for heart disease, cancer prevention, prevention of dementia. But to go back to sauna, in terms of its effect on detoxification, because I always, one of the things I tell my patients is, try to do the sauna as best you can. If you have it in your gym, if you can afford it, get it for the home. Besides the hormesis effect, which we'll get into, is the detoxification. So what is your opinion about that, and how does it work? How does that happen?
Well, part of our intake, when we talk to new clients or patients, we always ask them to tell us a little bit about their detox pathways. So sweating, peeing, pooping, and your lymphatic system are basically the major ones. Lymphatic being augmented by movement. So if we get a patient that's a little older and they're not moving around a lot and they don't poop regularly, that's problematic, because the sun rays, what happens with infrared, and our approach is full spectrum. So in other words, we're generating near, mid, and far wavelengths that are in the same proportion that the sun delivers it to the earth every day. So that's really important, because we're not deviating from the playbook of nature, and essentially it's one of our pillars here. And so in my studies, when I discovered, this is 25 plus years ago, that these wavelengths will mobilize toxins, what happens is a toxin binds to your tissue. Heavy metals even more so, because there's an actual ionic charge, like almost like a magnet, a polarized magnet, a positive and negative attraction. But even if it's environmental toxins, there is a bond. It's called a covalent bond in biophysics. And what sunlight does, what the infrared wavelengths do, when it penetrates through the body, into the body, it creates what's called a bioresonance, or a vibration. And that vibration breaks that covalent bond between the toxicant and wherever it's stored, whether it's tissue, organ, muscle. And then that toxin cascades into your serum or your bloodstream. And then it's left up to your elimination process, right? Our sewage systems in our bodies to try to get it out. So the reason why I love sauna is sweating is probably one of the best ways to get toxins out. But the way toxins come out through your skin, first off, you have to have a good breathing organism, your skin. So sometimes we offer dry brushing or loofah just to take the dead layer of skin off. The number one reason why people, and it's mostly women, and I'm not quite sure why this is, but the number one reason why people have trouble sweating is because they're dehydrated. So we drink a lot of water, but it passes through us. It doesn't cellular hydrate. And there is some technology, it's called phase angle, where you can put an electrode on your hand, and it can measure your cellular hydration. And it's really a great tool that we use in clinic to understand. But I already know before
we measure that in our clinic with we have an in-body body composition machine, and we measure the phase angle for the purpose to measure cellular health.
There we go. Okay. So we're talking the same language, you and me. Anyway, so hydration is a big part of it. And you have to have and people drink a lot of water, but it's not bioavailable. It doesn't actually get into the cell. It passes through. And sometimes that's because of the pH. A lot of waters that you don't realize that, but they're actually acidic. Even bottled waters are acidic, or in the process of excreting the plastic, which leaches into the water, that's not good. They're chemically not balanced. So they don't have what natural water does, energy and vortex, and from Gerald Pollack's work, the fourth phase of water, it's not structured. So we don't communicate on a cell level. So structured water that is, pure, and is properly mineralized is really important for us to hydrate on a cell level. The water, besides filling the interstitial fluid in our body, it's really important as a transport system on a cell level to get nutrients in and allow the cell to export their waste products.
Right.
So if you don't have good water and you're not cellular hydrated, you're already compromised. Okay.
And what I didn't know, I'm sorry.
Just I was going to say the importance of sweating, going back to that before we lose that point, because using the sauna on a regular basis will increase the amount of sweating and the ability to sweat more easily.
Correct.
When you use, the better is your ability to sweat. So that's another advantage that doesn't happen just at the moment that you use the sauna, but carries over time.
Totally. And I'm glad you brought that point up, Sandra, because what we studied and understood a few years back was the sequencing when you do the sauna and how you dose, and you could probably relate to that, Giovanni, with your own protocols, right? How you dose could make all the difference in an average result or a maximum result, right? And so again, we follow the playbook of nature. Like if we go back to our ancestors 10,000 years ago, they woke up to sunlight. We lived in caves or on the land or in tents, right? And so that stimulates your pineal gland to change from melatonin to serotonin, wakes up the body. It's also waking up all of your systems in your body so that the lights get turned on in sequence, right? So when we offer protocols with sauna, the best time to do it, the optimal time, is when you first wake up. But we have to make a choice in life, and sometimes practical, like in my view, the practical choice wins the optimal choice, because the practical one is the one you're mostly likely to adopt as a lifestyle change. Okay. And
that's
so
exactly what we always tell our patients. Incremental, small changes. Don't try to do it all. But that's interesting to know that. And, and back to the detox, what I didn't know was the lymphatic flow is increased. So that's a real super augmentation of the detoxification system, because that's the main way we detox.
Correct. And I'm sorry, did you need to say something?
I just want to say that in terms of heavy metals that get detoxified through sauna, the best success is with cadmium, right? And then aluminum gets eliminated also very easily. So if you know that those are the heavy metals that you have accumulated the most, so that's probably the best time to use the sauna.
Right. Very, very true. The ones that got the big headlines in the newspapers were like in Flint, Michigan, where they led, and people that are close to the dental industry know about mercury poisoning and toxicity. But there's truly a big dilemma with aluminum in the country that hasn't gotten any notoriety. Most vegetables, a lot of food sources are either cooked in aluminum foil or they're packaged in aluminum cans. And again, that's leaching back into our food systems and on and on. So there's a distinct ways that sauna can detox. The first part is the mobilization of the poison. And in the terms of the sweating, even sweating, 80% or more of our environmental toxins are held in the fat layer just under our skin. So the skin breathes in either through bathing. You'll get fluorides and chlorides and different forms of toxins through our water sources, right? As well as drinking. And then breathing, our skin's a breathing organ, not just our lungs. And so whatever in the air, like the chemtrails and the things that we see that fall down to earth, that's also we're breathing that stuff in. And so the fat layer actually under our skin protects us. It's designed anatomically to protect us from or shield us from extreme temperatures outside. So our internal organs are protected. So we've got this layer of insulation that protects us from extreme heat or extreme cold. Well, sauna is heat, right? But what's different about infrared sauna is that these wavelengths of sunlight actually resonate, vibrate, harmonize at the same frequency as the water inside of our bodies, which is 9.4 nanometers. Okay.
Maybe.
So this is the infrared spectrum. So where like a hot rock sauna and a steam room, they have to be kept at very high temperatures, which have you ever been in a steam room or a hot rock Swedish sauna?
We used to have a hot rock sauna, and now we have an infrared sauna. So it's just, the infrared, I prefer. I know there's different data from different sides of this story, but we prefer the infrared now. It's just easier to use, and we can tolerate it.
Well,
better.
my question to you was: is it easy for you to breathe in a hot rock or a steam room or hot rock sauna? Was it easy when you had that to breathe in that environment?
Well, there's much more humidity, so it's hard.
It's hard to breathe.
Yeah. So generally, people, because the elevated temperature, that has to be at 185 to 200 degrees.
Right.
Okay. And now, whereas infrared sauna, 130, even at 110, children, when they start under the age of 18, they can only be 5 degrees warmer than their core temperature. So it works on different principles. One is convection heat. The other is radiant heat from the sun. And so infrared sauna, the frequency, the wavelength actually resonates at the same wavelength as water. And so because that insulating fat cell is about 75 to 80%, 72% water, sunlight comes seamlessly through that layer of insulation into the body. And that's where the magic starts, because it starts to vibrate. It harbors in the densest parts of our bodies. And most people think that it's our structural system like our bones, but bones are porous. So they're not the most dense. The most dense is actually organ tissue and muscle tissue.
Right.
And so now we've got this bioresonance, the vibration going on around our organs and around our muscles, which also are the most vascular parts of our bodies. So that vibration liberates a little warmth. The warmth warms up the vessels that surround these organs and muscles. They naturally start to expand, or vasodilation is the technical term. So now we've got bigger vessels passing the same blood, same pressure from the heart. So we're increasing metabolism or your metabolic rate by something like 15 to 20%. Okay. And so now moving more blood around that carries oxygen, nutrition, and all of your, DNA and RNA, all the things that change, your body's composure in that regard. And so these are elemental changes in terms of the good that an infrared sauna can do and the ease of use. But back to detox, just one more point, Sandra. When the infrared comes through and it starts to percolate in the fat cell, the fat cell eliminates about 80% of the toxin through sweat, but the other 20% goes the other way into the body. Okay, so now we're actually raising the toxicity level of your blood. That's why sometimes people get a little nauseous, or they get headaches, or they get lethargic from doing sauna, because they're actually raising their toxic burden, which goes up to their, or load, toxic load goes up to the brain. The brain says, oh, I'm disoriented on this new toxic load, and gives you a symptom or a sign, right? So we love stacking or combining the synergistic effect of sauna, infrared sauna, and using like activated charcoal or what's called a binder. And so that acts like a biosponge. So as we pull the toxin out from wherever it's stored, we catch it with the binder. And then that takes the load or the burden off of your liver, pancreas, large intestine, kidneys, the filtering organs of the body, and allows us to actually more efficiently eliminate all levels of toxins. So these are all this is what we recommend. This is what we guide people to, so that if they're doing it, what do they say, right, Giovanni? Go big or go home, right? So we're about to go big, and I'm happy to be able to share this information to you.
Thank you. Our listeners love this sort of thing.
And it's helpful for us to hear all this information, because it's new to us. So we know of the health benefits, but we didn't know about all these mechanisms.
Well, that's why you hired me today, right? To bring you good.
So you were talking about the vasodilation, you were talking muscles, you were talking about the bones, and actually one of the great benefits of sauna is that it is as equally effective as mild exercise. So it does all the benefits that mild exercise can do. And with that, we're not saying you should just opt for sauna instead of exercise, but it's a very complementary thing. So when you cannot exercise, when you broke a limb, or you for whatever reason you cannot exercise, the sauna is a wonderful way to get the same health benefits. And also in terms of muscle mass, improves muscle mass, improves bone density, and increase and helps the cardiac system the same way that exercise does.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because we worked very closely with a lot of heart surgeons. Post-surgery, they recommend the infrared sauna because it actually stimulates, a faster heart rate, because we're now opening up the vessels. So on the repair side, if you've had valve adjustments or any kind of work like that, you can easily start on a low stress level to start to help and work that heart muscle just by stimulating it with infrared.
I remember the day when they said anyone with any kind of heart disease should not go near a sauna. So it's completely the opposite now.
Yes.
And it's interesting, we recently interviewed Nathan Bryan. I don't know if you're familiar with his work.
It's one of my closest friends.
Oh, okay. So, and one of the things we talked about is the effect of sauna on nitric oxide. You mentioned the vasodilatation of the arteries. That's mainly due to the endothelium, and nitric oxide is the main chemical involved with that. So I'd like to, hear more about it from your perspective.
Well, he's a big ambassador for us. He owns all of our equipment, and he actually he's very philanthropic. So he heals people, and he buys our equipment, and he pro bono just gives it to people in need in his community. So he's a great guy.
We really enjoyed speaking to him.
Yep. We, whenever we can, we get together for dinner. And we often go to medical conventions together. So we make sure our booths are right next to each other and we have a chance to have sense of community in that way. Well, it turns out that the near infrared frequencies, so infrared has 3 wavelengths, near, mid, and far. And the near frequencies actually produce nitric oxide naturally. And as you probably heard from Nathan, as we get older, probably mid-20s, late 20s, our body starts to make less nitric oxide. It's part of the aging process. It's why we have oxidative stress, because we're not making the nitric oxide that we need. So our blood oxygenation levels are compromised because of that as we get older. And so to get this natural sunlight, I mean, of course, I'm not taking anything away from his supplementation, because he probably makes some of the best applications of nitric oxide supplements, the lozenges. I take them every single day, ever since I've met him.
And also taking it before you go into the sauna. That's something.
Yes.
And we started that after we.
Fantastic. And I also take one of his supplements before I go to work out. He has a supplement that's called No Beetz, and it's like a drink, energy drink, but it also has trace minerals in it. So besides the beet complexes that will also vasodilate, when I'm a cyclist, that's what I like to do. So before I go for my bike ride, I take some of his supplements there, and it then it's just.
I like you even more because I'm a cyclist myself.
Okay, there we go. All right, so yes, Nathan is great. We produce nitric oxide. He's a big fan and big advocate for us. He knows, that our red lights and our near frequencies do it naturally, but even though they do it naturally, it's really nice to have that, plan B, or to have that supplementation, to know that it exists. And of course, he recommends morning and at night. And so, we'll do sauna once a day. Usually in the morning is best. And so you could take the his lozenge, in the night. And he also makes a wonderful skin application, Sandra, that's just amazing.
I've tried it, so it's very helpful.
Yeah, I use it after I shave, and my skin is feels so great. So, all right.
So we measure with devices the endothelial function.
Okay.
I have seen before and after sauna that the endothelial function has improved, and that's
fantastic
because of this effect, increasing nitric oxide.
Yep.
And it has a protective effect against developing hypertension. So
yes,
sauna to do a couple of times a week, and you get a 20% decrease in the possibility to develop hypertension. And if you do it 4 to 7 times a week, you decrease it by 40%.
Right.
Very little medication that can successfully do that. Right? So sauna overall, decreases all causes mortalities, by 60%. That's pretty dramatic. It decreases stroke risks, by 40, 60%. Again, depends on the frequency of the use. There is not much that is available that we know of, but that has this beneficial effect and help to prevent the dementia or Alzheimer's. Again, if you use it 4 to 7 times a week, you can have up to that 60% reduction in that. So very overall helpful.
Well, it also increases BDNF,
Correct.
which is the brain-derived neurotropic factor, which we don't have a lot of things that can do that. And this whole idea of neuroplasticity, which we used to think that as their brains get older, that's it, you're done. But now we know that's not true, and I think sauna really helps this in this generation of nerve cells.
We're actually doing a study now with a fairly famous neurosurgeon in Tyler, Texas. And we're doing a TBI study because the red light, we developed a very unique red light and near frequency panel that sits inside our sauna. We call it a tri-light. From an engineering point of view, LEDs, light emitting diodes, are generally monochromatic, meaning one dedicated frequency per diode. When I looked at the physics, and I, just as a entrepreneur and a pioneer or developer, I always ask the question, why? Why is the industry building monochromatic light? That's not how light comes from the sun. It's a full array. Like we know visible light, is a rainbow, right? So it's multi-frequency, it's polychromatic. And so I took a look at it from an engineering point of view, and there really wasn't any. It was more of an industry norm. So I developed my own special diode that we call Tri-Light, because it has 3 wavelengths in each diode. So I'm able to deliver 3 times the amount of photon energy, light energy, to come into the body to do all the things that we're talking about doing in a much more efficient way. So it's really been quite unique and very stunning in the results that we're getting on our side. So the statistics that you're offering, you're saying 2 things about one thing that I've been preaching for 25 years. There isn't one single commodity like natural sunlight, what that can do and how that can change and keep you on the health side. And to be able to, what we've done is we've built this little mousetrap, a better way to do it, an entry-level way that's inexpensive. We're very big about value, making sure that you get your money's worth. And we're also, as I mentioned earlier, we have a team that's designed to help you understand what your goals are and how to get there with our devices. And so we feel like we almost covered all the bases. And I think that that's important in today's world, which I feel gets less personal each day. It used to be that my bank teller knew me by my first name, and if I needed to wire transfer, I could do it on a phone call. Now I go to the bank, and all there are ATM machines. There's no people in there anymore. And so we're trying to put more personal. We're trying to personalize our business in a way and bring back some of those things that I believe have been lost a little bit in translation.
You do well is that you offer those portable ones that are very friendly user to use. They can be used in small environment, and also
Exactly.
a particular plug, because our infrared sauna we needed to change, to call these specialized electricians, and
Correct.
where you offer any plug, it can, people can use it very easily.
Right. And we make it in a version that also goes to Europe. So, that has a European current electricity. So, depending on where you are in the world. And the other thing that's very unique about our format, it's basically every part is plug and play. And so, for instance, if you're a Lyme patient and you're located in the Polynesian Islands and your sauna fails, on one simple phone call in 2 minutes, we can diagnose what part you need, and I can FedEx that part to you. And in 2 days, you'd be back completely operative. In the past, the other platforms that we built and every other competitor of ours, if the same Polynesian person called up, it would take a week for me to get their sauna. It would take me 3 to 5 days to fix it and another week to get it back. Now, if you're a Lyme patient or a cancer patient and you're depending on that sauna for your vitality every day, 3 weeks is an eternity. To you and I and to healthy people out there, what's 3 weeks? But to someone that's chronically ill, it makes a big difference. And so having a plug and play format where I can identify the part, FedExpress it to you overnight, and then have you just plug out the old one and plug in the new one seems trivial, but it's truly amazing.
The other thing that I'm fascinated by sauna is it's, really, the whole idea of having a runner's high and having endorphins release and endorphin resetting your mu opioid receptors. I think that's fascinating, because you get this like euphoric, and we feel that, when we do the sauna.
And you start to feel dependent. You want to do it more. Like I can't wait, to do my next sauna, because there is that sense of well-being, and that is one of the reasons why they believe that sauna works for depression. There was, a recent study that showed that even one treatment of sauna, 20-minute treatment, was under 35 or 40 degrees Fahrenheit, was able to relieve symptoms of depression up to 6 weeks after that one treatment. So now they're doing all these studies. And can you imagine for us, psychiatrists who see so many treatment-resistant depression, which means people that don't respond to medications after 3 or 4 different trials, if you can offer sauna as a treatment, that is pretty good.
Right. And our barrier of entry is really low, not very expensive. And basically you have one choice, black or white. There's no, the color, and that just fits your decor. But like you said earlier, there's no special electricity. It sets up, my best time is 40 seconds to set it up. So virtually within minutes, you can take it out of the box and plug it in and be in sauna.
So what's your recommendation on how to use a sauna? I know you already mentioned some of this, but how frequently, how long, and hydration during sauna,
Before, after,
during, not to get your core body temperature too low, because I've heard some people say don't drink cold water when you're in sauna, so because you offset that core body temperature effect. What's your general recommendation?
Okay. So when you buy our sauna, you get a PDF that we call best practices for doing sauna. So you get basically an instructional guide, but we usually set an intermittent goal for 130 degrees for 30 minutes. That's what our goal is. And depending on how the customer or the patient presents themselves, if they're very fragile, we'll scale it back because we're very conservative. We go low and slow. But that's the ultimate goal for us to try to achieve in the first 4 to, let's say, 6 weeks, somewhere in that range. And if I were your swimming coach, Giovanni, I wouldn't, and you were deathly afraid of drowning, I wouldn't throw you into the deep end of the pool and then say, I'm going to go for a latte, I'll be back in a half hour, and expect you to survive, right? So if you're very symptomatic, I might start you off in the shallow end of the pool with just your toe in the water, so you relieve the fear, and you get to feel the temperature, and then we can slowly walk you into the deep end of the pool. We do the same with sauna. So we have this goal of 130 for 30 minutes. When you turn the unit on, it defaults to 125 degrees Fahrenheit and 60 minutes, because we've made a sauna that's geared towards people with chronic ailments, and they may need 60 or 90 minutes, which is what our sauna will go up to. And our sauna is one of the hottest ones on the market, temperature-wise. It goes up to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. And what's interesting, and you may know this from your wooden sauna, it only takes us about 14 minutes to go from room temperature, 74 degrees, to 140 degrees, where the wooden saunas traditionally could take 40 minutes, like a half hour or 45 minutes to warm up to that temperature. So we get there a little faster. We're more efficient. We don't need special electricity. We fold up into a little bag, so if you have no space. So initially, we made wooden saunas, and we still make a really good wooden sauna. But when I made that as an inventor, I'm a very active listener, and I hear what people were saying was, I live on Park Avenue in a 700 square foot apartment. That's $1 million. I have no space for it. Right? So let's get something space saving. And then I heard from other customers, well, I live in a house with a big basement. I'm in Minnesota, but I can't afford, $4,000 or $5,000 for the good wooden ones. So I needed to make something space saving and economical. And that was the genesis of my idea behind the portable pop-up sauna. So 130 for 30 minutes. The best time to do it is the early part of the day. We like to start off with a glass of 8 to 10 ounces of room temperature water, hopefully filtered, hopefully structured. And then that's when we would take the binder somewhere within a half hour before you come into sauna. Now you get into sauna, you already have the binder into your bloodstream. You've already started to hydrate, because that 10 ounces is, whether you well hydrated or not, it's going to assure me as the practitioner that you're going to have enough water to promote the sweating at the time of your sauna session. Then you dial in your temperature. You have to be mindful of the detox or recovery reactions, which would be lightheadedness, dizziness, nausea, headaches, maybe histamine responses like itchy skin or blotchy skin. So these are all
the same reactions, by the way, when we do a detox, a detox with drinks and foods and that sort of thing. We see patients go through the same effect. So that's that is the effect of the chemicals or whatever is getting into your bloodstream. And what's the binder that you like? And what specific binder do you like to use?
Well, there's 2 classes of binders. There's like the big sponge or the macro binder, and that's generally like a bentonite clay or an activated charcoal. We like 2 companies. Initially, we were going with Cellcore, and they have brand. The company is Cellcore, and the activated carbon is called biotoxin. But we've recently switched to Dr. Cabral's binder because it combines a little sponge, a little bit of the little sponge and the big sponge all in one. And he calls his the ultimate binder. So he's someone that we really respect in the healthcare industry. He's multidisciplined, so he does Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine, as well as the Western approach. He combines all those disciplines in his formulations. So we've been following him for quite a while, and we are advocating for his binder now. So you take 2 tabs of that about a half hour before sauna with a good healthy glass of water. Now you do your session.
You do that daily.
Yeah, it's cumulative. So generally when people say how often, I ask you, how often do you get toxic? Because as far as I know, if you live in a place, by the way, where you get toxic on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, please tell me where you live, because I'm moving to your...
No, I'm saying the binder. You could take the binder every day if you do the sauna every day.
I do binder whether I'm in sauna or not.
Okay.
Because there's other ways to mobilize toxins. For instance, you're a cyclist and so am I. So I do my normal sauna session very early in the morning. So I'm up generally 4:30, 5 in the morning. So I do guided meditation and I set my intentions. I ask for forgiveness. That takes an hour by itself, by the way. So that's where I time my sauna, just by how much I have to ask for forgiveness. And then I do my session. After sauna, you do another healthy glass of water, about 10 ounces, 8 to 10 ounces. And the reason why I do that is because I'm mobilizing toxins. So I'm raising the toxic load. And so when you take that second glass of water, I'm diluting down that toxic burden, making it less burdensome on your filtering organs. So with the binder catching the toxin and the proper hydration, it gives the patient a very smooth detoxification session when they're in that sauna for that time. We also take binder at night before bed, because generally between the hours of 12 and 4 in the morning, your brain actually shrinks a little bit and is flushed with spinal fluid, almost like a car wash. And so there's a detox that happens while we're sleeping. Right. And so I take binder again in the evening to capture those poisons that are happening while I'm sleeping. So and then to make even things more, I want to say complex, but it really isn't. Whenever I'm doing an activity, like I microdose a binder before I go and ride my bike. I would microdose if I went to go play tennis, like before I knew an activity event, because activity also creates free radicals, and it also, which is a toxin, and it also mobilizes toxins that are in your muscles. So when you're getting a massage, I don't know if you've ever had a massage and you got off the table and felt a little nauseous or a little woozy, right? Well, they're pushing not just the stress out of your muscles, they're also pushing the toxins that are stored in your muscles into your bloodstream. So if you know beforehand that you're going for one of those events, whether it be an active event or Pilates or like a massage, something like that, I did microdose a little binder there. So I'm actually always thinking, what's the most efficient way for me to get the harmful environmental toxins out of my body? Because I think that the long-term wellness plan is to keep yourself as the lowest, calmest from a stress point of view and less toxic, because toxicity and inflammation travel together. And most people,
pollution is now a risk factor for heart disease. So, it's a very, very big thing.
For depression, but one of the things when we're talking about the binders, sauna does that naturally, right? The heat shock proteins are exactly that, right? Heat shock proteins get released dramatically, during sauna treatment, and they bind the toxins, right?
Yes. And they also are they aggressively go after any of the invaders. Correct. So we actually were one of the companies, they studied our frequencies, because during the whole COVID event, the heat shock protein is almost like a URL or a license plate. It's very specific. And so heat shock protein 78 is the one that will go after, attack, or basically it's a targeting system like GPS. So it attaches and allows the lymphatic system, the T57 killer cell, to know what to go after. Because absent the heat shock protein, then we have an autoimmune response, which basically our immune system starts attacking everything because it's not targeted. So there's a heat shock protein number 78 that is targets the corona series of viruses. And one of the bio researchers that we know studied our frequencies in our sauna and saw that we actually will promote or emit that particular heat shock protein with our frequencies.
Very good. That's why we saved ourselves from COVID.
That's right.
There you go.
This is a modality that doesn't do much. It detoxes. It helps you maintain your muscle mass. It helps increase your endurance. It decreases your mortality from heart disease and strokes. It's neuroprotective. It's neuroplastic, and
Depression and anxiety.
so other than that, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, it also helps with weight loss if people are interested in that.
So it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing that has been around for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. And in Finland, they've studied this quite a bit. And this is in Finland. They use this, and it's been shown to reduce heart disease risk, which is the number one cause of death in Americans, up to 40% in some studies, which is amazing.
Right. Totally.
Again, and it's proportional to the days of the week, how many days a week you use it. So
yeah, there's a dose response curve.
Correct. That is
And I actually sauna, definitely 6 days, maybe even 7 days. But I think, like as you pointed out earlier, 3 days is, 30 minutes for 3 days a week can actually increase your longevity by 30 to 40%. And if you go to 5 days a week, it's 60 to 80% in that range. I mean, that's all causes of morbidity.
And that increases health span, more importantly. That's our focus in our patients, is to increase the quality of their life. And this is a huge thing to increase quality of life. Now, one last question from me anyway is, I always tell my patients to go out in the early morning light, get the wavelength that stimulates the melanoopsin in their eyes, goes to the pineal gland, increases melatonin, serotonin. Did you say that in the sauna this occurs? The sauna itself does this?
Well, the UV spectrum is the one that's going to actually be the one that will augment what you just talked about, that light source. Infrared frequencies are actually invisible to light. So it takes visible light to actually activate the optic nerve, which then is tied to the pineal gland and do all the hormonal shifting like you suggested. Gazing is a really popular thing now, sun gazing, and you have to do it at the early rise of the sun or the very late, just before dusk, nowhere in between. So, and you have to dose into that. I'm talking about 10 to 15 seconds, then a couple of days of that, then 20 seconds, then 30 seconds, and people build up to a minute or so. And I'm in Florida. Part of where I cycle, I have what's called a fat bike, and so I ride on the beach, on the sand, and I generally go around 4:35 in the morning before the sunrise, and so I ride about 8 or 9 miles. I work up a pretty good sweat. And then I come back, I strip down, I go jump in the ocean, I watch the sunrise, I catch that early morning sun. So and plus all of the minerals that are in salt water, I get to remineralize, absorb all that back into my body. So earlier we should have said that when you sweat a lot and you use it regularly, you sweat out trace minerals and you sweat out electrolytes. So it's very important that you put that back in for your body.
And the binders also may take out some minerals.
Not that much, mostly toxicants. I haven't seen a lot of research, but some people are concerned if I take like some kind of medication, there might be some interaction there. So if you are concerned, just separate the binder from an hour or so from when you're taking that medication. But I haven't seen much. The only, actually it's more in your area, Sandra, the nano binder, which is a silica derivative called zeolite, that's the one that catches heavy metals, biofilms, neurotoxins, mycotoxins. But the only interaction I've seen in research is with lithium, the mood-altering drug, lithium. So if you're on lithium, then you have to be careful about the interaction with the zeolite, the nanobinder. But other than that, they're safe. It's actually one of the only things that I would ever prescribe for all of us living in a modern world to do every day, just to help keep your body, from being toxic free.
It's a good advice.
And one more thing we haven't mentioned is how the sauna increases the growth hormone levels and how it
yes,
also, for overall well-being.
Yeah. And you know what? On the cosmetic side, the near infrared frequencies produce natural collagen. So my wife uses our near pad that's in the sauna. We have it broken out. We call it the curve, the Twilight curve. And she puts it on her face for 30 minutes every morning. And so rather than using Botox or any fillers, now, because as you age, you also lose some of that collagen production. And so now she's got a very youthful look. So she's happy with it. I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to try.
I think a big take home from today's discussion is that truthfully, there's really something for everyone that's listening today with using infrared sauna.
And that's true. So, well, thank you for your time. I think our listeners are going to be super interested in hearing this. And hopefully we can do it again sometime in the future.
Thank you.
Well, I'm here and happy to help.